Your property's wind zone can change how much your bill costs, sometimes by tens of thousands of dollars. If you're planning to build in New Zealand, one of the first things you need to know is your property's wind zone. Why? Because it can affect your design, your materials, and sometimes the cost of the building by thousands of dollars. In this video, I'm going to explain what the wind zones are, how to find out the wind zone, and why it's so important. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Bahaya and I make videos to help property owners and people who work in building industry in New Zealand. In my videos, I try to answer the questions that I get asked a lot as an architect and a draftsperson. In New Zealand, every property sits in one of the 6 wind zones: low, medium, high, very high, extra high, and SED. SED stands for Specific Engineering Design, which basically means the wind zone is so high that is outside of the standard New Zealand building code, and you need an engineer to specifically design your structure. There are a few ways to find out your wind zone. The easiest way is to use the brand map tool. I'm going to take you on my screen to show you what I mean. So you just go to brand's website. I'll put a link in the description below. You go in this bar and type in your property's address, and then it will zoom into your property. You click here on the map and it will pop a window which gives you your wind zone and a whole lot of other information about your property. Now here's the trick. Here, the wind zone that is shown here is the highest wind zone that is in your property. Sometimes if you have a bigger property, you might have a few different wind zones in your property. So if I close this one, go here into the layer list and click on the eye next to the wind zone, it will lay different colors on the map. I'm going to zoom out for you to see. So if I click on this property, it says the wind zone is very high. Now I'm going to map information and click on the wind zone here. It will show a keynote here which says which color is what wind zone. So you see yellow is very high and pale green is high. So if I close this one, you can see in this property we have very high wind zone here and here, but the majority of the property is actually located in high wind zone. Another trick is to click here and change your base map into satellite view. This way you can find out the wind zone in different parts of your property a lot easier. Now I'm going to change the base map to basic so it's a little bit faster, and I'm going to zoom out. You see this red area here? If you go into the keynote, it says specific engineering design. This area is SPD, which means that you need to get an engineer to specifically design your structure or to tell you what your property wind zone is. In this specific example, it doesn't necessarily mean that the wind zone of your property, if you're located here, is SED. What it means is France hasn't mapped this out because the whole area is red. And I know that there are a lot of areas in this part that are not SED wind zone. So all you need to do is hire an engineer to tell you the wind zone of your property. There are a few parts in New Zealand like this. Here is the Hauraki. There's one here in Tongariro area, and one here in Taranaki. There's a big area in South Island here, and another one in Midland of South Island. Now I'm going to zoom in an area that is famous for being a high wind zone area like Wellington. These red dots here, these red areas, they do mean that your property is SED wind zone and you need to hire an engineer to design the structure of your building here. Some of the land, you see, the whole land is in SED wind zone. The second way to find out about your property's wind zone is using NZS 3604, which is the standard for timber frame building in New Zealand. To decide the wind zone of your property, you need to use the graph and the tables in Chapter 5. Now, this is not the easiest to use. You need to have a very good understanding of your land topography and terrain. And normally, if we want to use NZS 3604 to determine the wind zone, we hire an engineer to do that for us. And finally, the third way to find out your property's wind zone is through your local council's website. Now, not all the councils have this service, but one of the councils that, for example, has the service is Wellington City Council. So you go to the website, the Wellington City Council website, type in wind to find the wind zone map, click on it, and it will give you a map which overlays different colors of different wind zones for properties. Just see where that I have used this map in few of my projects in the past, and sometimes there's conflicting information with regards to wind zone when you choose the city council wind zone map or you choose the brand. In case there's conflicting information, make sure to use an engineer to decide the actual wind zone of your property. Now, why is all this important? Because the wind zone can affect two things in your building design. The first thing is the bracing design, the bracing element, and the uplift fixing, which means that the higher the wind zone of your property is, you need more bracing in the piles, in the walls, in the roof, and also you need a lot more fixing from screws to the strap to hold and tie your structure together and prevent the structure from getting uplifted in the event of storm and high winds. And the second thing that is getting affected by wind zone in your building design is the moisture risk matrix. Moisture risk matrix is a table that has different factors that are risk for getting the moisture into the cladding of the building. These can be the design of the building, how big your eaves are, and a mix of other factors, and wind zone is one of them. So the higher the wind zone of your property is, the higher the risk factor is, and the more watertight your cladding design needs to be, which means that you might need more elements to prevent the water to ingress into your cladding. For example, instead of building paper, you might need rigid air barrier or wrap. I'm going to show you an example on my screen to tell you what exactly I mean. I use Design Navigator website to decide the risk factor of my design. So let's say we have a property which is in medium wind zone and we are building a two-story house in it has a monopitch roof, which means that the roof to wall intersection fully exposed. For example, it has eaves at greater than 90 degrees to vertical with the fit lining. So I have to choose this one. And then the eave width, let's say we're building 451 millimeter eave. We choose this one. The envelope complexity is simple. It has one single type of cladding and it's just a simple rectangle. And it has a slated timber deck at the ground floor, no deck at the upper story. So it gives us a total risk score of 6. Now, if I scroll down here, it has two different tables. One says direct fix to framing, and the other one is over nominal 20 millimeter drained cavity. And it gives you a list of different types of cladding that you're allowed to use either direct fix or over the cavity pattern. Now, if I go here, for example, if I'm cladding my building in plywood sheet, it says that it has the green tick, which means that I'm allowed to have it direct stick with this design. Now let's change the wind zone from medium to high here. Now all of a sudden the total risk score is 7, and you see we are not allowed to use plywood sheet cladding direct stick anymore. We're allowed to have it over nominal 20 millimeter drain cavity, but not direct stick. Let's change the wind zone one more time to very high, and the risk score is 8 now. One more. These haven't changed. Let's change it again to extra high, and all of a sudden you can see everything is red on this side, and there's a note here that says cladding in extra high wind zone shall be installed over drain cavities and require rigid underlay. And it has a reference to E2AS1 building code. So you can see there's a huge difference between the cost of the building if you're building the same design on a property in medium wind zone or extra high wind zone. It may, for the example that I showed on my screen, you could build the design without needing cavity battens, just over building paper directly fixed to the cladding. And if you want to build the exact same design in another property that is in extra high wind zone, you need cavity battens and rigid air barrier, which could mean, depending on the size of the building, it could mean tens of thousands of dollars extra cost. So if you're looking to buy a property to develop it further or even buy a land to build on it, wind zone is one of the things that you need to keep an eye on it. If you want to save in the cost of the building, of course, there are a lot of other important things that you need to pay attention, such as the view, the neighborhood, the sunlight, lots of other things. But the topic of this video is wind zone, and wind zone is one of those things that not many people are aware of, or it might get overlooked in the excitement of finding a new project or a new land. I hope this video helped you to understand how to find out the wind zone of your property and why it's important. If you found it helpful, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe if you haven't already. If you know a friend or family who is looking to buy land or a property to develop further and you think this information might be helpful for them as well, please share the link. Thank you very much for watching the video, and I see you in the next one.